Just 2 days ago, we talked about how 2 Planned Parenthood nurses and a doctor managed to botch CPR, resulting in a patient's death. Today again, we're looking at a screw-up by a nurse at Planned Parenthood that resulted in a patient's death. This is Christina with the Sisyphean Journal, and today is February 14th. Edrika Good was a student at Riverside Community College. She went to a Planned Parenthood in Riverside, California on January 31st, 2007 for a safe, legal second trimester abortion. She was a little bit over 14 weeks pregnant. Now, a nurse examined Edrika and noticed that she had clear signs, obvious signs, of a vaginal infection. But the nurse decided to go ahead and insert laminaria, which I've talked about. They're those little seaweed sticks. And what they do is they absorb moisture from the woman's body, and they expand, and that dilates the cervix to prepare it for the abortion. The manufacturer's instructions specifically say that they are not to be left in place more than 24 hours because of the infection risk, and they are never to be inserted if there is an infection present. But the nurse went ahead and did it anyway. So Edrika was sent home basically with a clear path set up between the infection and her uterus. Now, Edrika had not told her family about the abortion. She didn't go back to the facility to have the laminaria removed because she got so sick so quickly that she couldn't go. She became feverish, and she was so feverish that her behavior completely broke down. She was confused and disoriented. She didn't know what day it was. She started acting aggressively. She started vomiting. So she didn't have the wherewithal to return to the clinic. She had no idea what was happening because the infection had already taken such a strong hold. Now, Planned Parenthood's patient profile for Edrika said that they mailed her 2 letters telling her to return and have the laminaria removed. Edrika's mother said that the letters never arrived. She does indicate that Planned Parenthood called, but Edrika was too sick to take the calls. So, there they were in a situation. There was patient confidentiality, but there was Edrika being too sick to take the calls. Now, we need to have a discussion about what would have been the proper thing for them to do at that point. The nurse had already severely screwed up. The nurse had already done something that had brought about this massive raging infection and the fever that was making Edrika so confused and her mind so muddled that she couldn't make rational decisions. There's the confidentiality, there's the patient safety. Very clearly, the laminaria cannot be left in place more than 24 hours. And that nurse, at least, knew that there was additional danger in Edrika's case because of the vaginal infection that was already there and that was being wicked into her uterus. Edrika's family took her to Riverside County Regional Medical Center on February 4th. A blood test there did reveal that she was pregnant, but the hospital didn't perform a pelvic exam because Edrika was in no condition to consent to it. And again, they had no reason to think that a pelvic exam was going to do anything. She was treated in the medical ward for 5 days. Then they transferred her to a psychiatric unit, which promptly sent her back to the medical unit to have them check for possible sepsis. So here we have the hospital screwing up. They didn't detect the sepsis. They were so focused on her mental confusion that they sent her to the psych ward. So her condition continued to deteriorate, and finally Edrika's boyfriend told her family about the abortion. And again, here we have the boyfriend. Was he aware of the fact that these first steps toward the abortion were so dangerous for her? And what would have happened if he had spoken up sooner? Well, staff at the hospital finally performed the pelvic exam and discovered the laminaria along with some gauze. So they removed the laminaria, and Edrika expelled the dead baby that day. But the next day, Valentine's Day, 2 days short of her 22nd birthday, Edrika died. The coroner determined that she had died from toxic shock syndrome, prolonged retention of the laminaria, and pregnancy. Because pregnancy was put on the death certificate, it's almost certain that her death was counted as a maternal death to be used to prove how much safer abortion is than childbirth, rather than as an abortion death, because the abortion never took place, just the preparatory steps. Now, Edrika's mother sued. She told the paper, "My daughter made a choice, but she didn't choose to die. A lost dog gets more attention than my daughter did. This is really torn at my family." Edrika was the third death among Planned Parenthood patients in California in just a 4-year period. Holly Patterson had died from an infection, septic shock syndrome, after an RU-486 abortion in 2003. Diana Lopez had bled to death in 2002. And Edrika's mother's lawyer indicates that Planned Parenthood did not report any of those deaths to the state as required by law. And I'm just going to guess that if they didn't report them to the state, they probably didn't report them to the CDC either, which would be another reason that Edrika's death would be counted as a maternal death and used to prove that carrying to term is ever so much more dangerous than abortion. When I see somebody holding a sign telling me they're standing with Planned Parenthood, they're standing on Edrika's grave. They're standing on Diana's grave. They're standing on Holly's grave. They're standing on Elisa's grave. They're standing on Tanya Reeves' grave. These deaths are not examples of all surgery has risks. These are examples of inexcusable screw-ups. You don't have to be against abortion, and you don't have to be on some kind of vendetta against Planned Parenthood to demand that they clean up their act if they want any more tax money.